Армысыздар, құрметті көрермен, Алматы арнасының эфирінде арнайы сұхбат және біздің бүгінгі қонағымыз ақш-ның Қазақстандағы төтенше және өкілетті елшісі William Moser мырза. Mr. Moser, welcome to Almaty, and it's a great honor for me to take interview with you. Thank you for that, for this opportunity.
Well, Igarim, thank you very much, because it's a pleasure for me to have a chance to talk to you again, and also it's always wonderful when I am in Almaty. For me, after having lived here for 3 years, from 1996 to 1999, I always feel that when I come back to Almaty, I'm coming home.
So let's start our conversation with the Afghanistan situation.
Sure.
In his recent addresses, President Tokayev noted the situation in Afghanistan and its growth of overall tension globally.
Mm-hmm.
So a radical group, so now we say they took over the power in the country. And what do you think? Do you think it can be a risk not only for Central Asia, but for all the world?
Well, Igaram, I want to say that I too am very concerned about Afghanistan, and I am concerned on the situation in Afghanistan and how it affects our partners in Kazakhstan and in the other countries in Central Asia, because we care very deeply about our relationships with all of the countries in Central Asia and hope that they will continue to be secure and stable. But if I can talk a little bit about how we look at Afghanistan today, that we want, we acknowledge the Taliban's presence in Afghanistan, but we want to encourage them to take the right measures and to create an inclusive Afghanistan government that will really be to the benefit of all of Afghanistan's people. That's the reason why we worked with our partners in the United Nations to pass a Security Council resolution on August 30th that called for inclusivity in the government and for Afghanistan to no longer be a home to terrorist groups. And we feel that it's only through these kinds of measures that Afghanistan can build a stable country that will actually have a positive effect on Central Asia instead of having potentially a very, very negative effect. So we and our international partners will continue Afghanistan to take these kinds of measures, and we will continue to stay diplomatically engaged.
And do you believe that it's possible to establish this diplomatic relationships with, Taliban group, which are prohibited in many countries?
Well, I'll say this, Igaram, that, I am a professional diplomat, and I've been a diplomat over 30 years. And I am a big believer in the importance of engagement. And even though you may have disagreements with the government, it doesn't mean that you stop engaging with them. And I will say, too, it's very important to clarify that we may or may not recognize the government in Afghanistan or recognize the Taliban government. However, that doesn't mean that our diplomatic engagement stops, because what we intend to do is to continue to talk to the Taliban, particularly in Qatar, where we currently have the Afghanistan diplomatic mission. And they will talk to the Taliban who are resident there, and we will also continue to engage with them at other fora around the world. Because just because we don't recognize a government doesn't mean we're going to stop the engagement. And we are very, very dedicated to having a more positive future for the Afghanistan people. And so our engagement is very important. And I think that we can find, and I'm very hopeful that over time we will find a way to have a productive relationship with the Taliban. And really, hopefully, that will be that inclusive government that we're all hoping to create.
Can I ask about evacuating people, Afghan people? For example, now, even me, most Afghan journalists, also Afghan people, they write with a request of evacuating them. Most they want to evacuate in US or Europe, yes. What do you think about them, local people who is not, who doesn't agree with Taliban principles?
Well, this is the reason why we've said that we want to continue engaging with the Taliban, because we do want to see them allow for the free movement of people now that the U.S. And the NATO presence is gone out of the country. In other words, those people that feel that they cannot build a future in Afghanistan should be given the opportunity to depart. And we feel that channel is also important to maintain. And this is part of our engagement strategy with them, that we want to encourage them that these kinds of opportunities will still be present. Now, I was very encouraged today that the airport opened again for commercial airlines. And that's a good sign, because if it opened this soon for commercial air traffic, it means that there is a desire on part of the government to really to still maintain those contacts with the outside world. And we want them to have a normal relationship with their people, where their people will have the opportunities to come and go.
Is the U.S. ready to open the door to Afghan people?
Well, that is all of the entry of the Afghanis to the United States has to be contingent upon what's allowed by U.S. law. Now, we have allowed into the United States tens of thousands of Afghans who worked for us during the period of the 20 years that we were in Afghanistan. And they are the ones that qualify for what we call a special immigrant visa. And in fact, thousands of them are already in the United States. Now, and some of them are in third countries waiting their visas to be processed. And those we know have a claim. Now, there are other groups that have the possibility of obtaining refugee status, but they have to qualify under U.S. law for that status. And that is a very complicated process to explain in an interview. But there are categories where they do allow entry into the United States, but they all have to meet with the criteria set by U.S. law.
I know that it was very difficult also for American people who lived in Afghanistan for about 20 years, yeah, who was close to Afghan people also when they were in Afghanistan. So could you tell more about it? So it was difficult for even American people to go back to U.S. because of this close relationship with local people.
Well, and that's true, because we do have Americans who develop close relationship with the Afghan people over the years. And there's many stories in the press about what the reactions of those people are as they've returned to the United States. But I really think it's worth saying this, that after 20 years, President Biden was very clear that we had achieved our goals in Afghanistan. We went there in order to eliminate the threat of terrorism from Al-Qaeda. And once Osama bin Laden was killed, then our reason for being in Afghanistan, really the original reason, was no longer there. So it was really past time to end the presence of U.S. troops there, and really let the Afghan people determine their own fate. So even though I'm sympathetic to the views of Americans who are very emotionally attached to Afghanistan, at the same time, I think there's a realization that the United States must consider its strategic objectives. And if our strategic objective in the country was accomplished, then there was really no more justification for keeping U.S. troops there.
Okay. In 2011, no, not 2011.
2001?
Yes.
Yes.
I was a student of first course, and we all remember the situation in September 11th, so in New York. So now we see that, as you mentioned now, that U.S. achieved its goal. So, but most even American political people, so they say it's that NATO, it was a fail of NATO's position. What do you think about this?
Well, I think that's a misinterpretation of what our real strategic objectives were, because we never said that we were, the United States really didn't have as a clear strategic objective to really remake Afghanistan, and I think that was unrealistic. What we want to make sure, and we still want to make sure today, is that Afghanistan can no longer be a home for terrorists. And we don't want to see, and we don't want to see the gains that the Afghan people have made in the last 20 years actually be lost. And that's the reason why we want to continue the diplomatic engagement. But at the end of the day, President Biden made a very hard, cold analysis of what our true strategic objectives were in Afghanistan. And his conclusion is one that I think clear-eyed said, we accomplished what we needed to accomplish, and now it's time for the Afghanistan people to do what they need to do in order to build the society that they want. I have, I know the future, it's hard to see into the future right now, and no one has a crystal ball. But I will say that the Afghan people are not the same people that were in Afghanistan 20 years ago. In fact, they have a very young population who don't remember who the Taliban were 20 years ago. And so I think that it's going to be a new situation and in a much more connected world. When you were a student 20 years ago, I bet you you might have had some internet, but very, very poor internet. And I remember when I left Kazakhstan in 1999, I had the fastest internet line in the country, or one of the fastest, because I had one of a specially dedicated phone line that was wonderful for the time. But it wasn't the information superhighway that many of us have access to now. And even Afghans have access to that. And I think it changes how the people of Afghanistan will look upon their future.
Okay, thank you. So this year we celebrate the 30th anniversary of CMA's nuclear test sites closing. So, and we know this President Tokayev, our president, received a congratulatory letter from President Biden about this. So, how would you assess our first president's role in establishing this maybe peace world, if you can say?
Well, I will say this, that I have, since my tenure as ambassador here, I have always highly praised First President Nazarbayev regarding the brave actions that he took to close in August of 2001, or not 2001, excuse me, August of 1999, to close the Semipalatinsk test site. And in fact, this really demonstrated that Kazakhstan would be a leader in the world in encouraging nonproliferation. In fact, it is where we look to Kazakhstan even today as being that voice to remind others that getting rid of the nuclear the nuclear weapons test infrastructure and getting rid of the nuclear weapons can lead to as a path to peace. And when we look at the whole sum of President Nazarbayev's achievements in this area, it is definitely something that has made Kazakhstan important important to world security and importantly to world peace.
Okay, thank you. So now, as you know, our President Tokayev, he said also this Kazakhstan's position in building the new atom energetic station. So what do you think about the potential of Kazakhstan to develop in this sphere?
Well, I can't speak definitely to the technical parts about Kazakhstan's nuclear power plant intentions, but I will say this, that we have nuclear power in the United States, and many of our international partners, such as the Koreans, the Japanese, the French, also use nuclear power extensively. And what I would say is that these countries all have a demonstrated safety record in the use of nuclear power. And my urging to Kazakhstan is to make sure that if they do choose to build another nuclear power plant, that they are able to communicate to the Kazakhstani people that all safety measures are being taken to make sure that it is as safe as possible. You know, to be a little bit more technical, you know, in the modern generations of nuclear power plants in the United States are called carbon reactors, and they're built essentially in component stages. But they emit a very, very low level of waste, and they can be built in stages. And as a result, they're much safer than the old style reactors. And so this is what I would wish Kazakhstan to consider, is to think about using the very best in modern technology to build the safest reactor possible, if that is the decision Kazakhstan wants to take.
Do you think that the U.S. can also support the partnership or relationship in this sphere also?
Well, we do have companies that are actually anxious in bidding on this project. And we will, of course, support them because we believe that they will bring a safe nuclear power to Kazakhstan.
Okay, thank you. This year also our 30th anniversary of our independence, and also 30 years of how we established, U.S. and Kazakhstan's diplomacy relationship. So, in which spheres, in which spheres can be developed the U.S.-Kazakhstan's relationships?
Well, it's very interesting, Igaram, that 30 years ago, in December, on Christmas Day, George Bush, the then president, said that we support the independence, sovereignty, and territorial integrity of Kazakhstan. And when it comes down to it, every project we do today is still trying to achieve those three goals: independence, territorial integrity, and sovereignty of Kazakhstan. And it's very interesting because, for example, when we teach English, and you know, you've been a recipient of some of our English language programs, we're trying to let young Kazakhstanis and even older Kazakhstanis really participate in the international world. And we believe that kind of program actually helps Kazakhstan's independence and its sovereignty, because it shows that Kazakhstan has an identity that is not the identity of its neighbors. And so that's just one idea. But when we help with rule of law programs, we're trying to strengthen Kazakhstani society. Or when we work on the environment, we're trying to make Kazakhstan a better place for its people. All of those things are in order for us to build a better future for Kazakhstan and really make it a more independent, more sovereign, and to guarantee that territorial integrity. So in many ways, we haven't changed our approach from what we had 30 years ago. And that is one reason why I am very happy to celebrate the 30th anniversary. I think it is a wonderful thing to celebrate, because looking at these 30 years, we can start to shape what the next 30 years will look like. And we're not going to change those core principles, because it's from those principles where we get the idea of what we're going to do.
Thank you, thank you. So, as you mentioned before, you worked here in Almaty, in Kazakhstan, and in Almaty. So, if we just compare, how was Almaty yesterday and now? So can we just your opinion?
Well, it is amazing to me. You know, I'll have to say, a confession for you, that I have had some wonderful meals these last several days in some wonderful restaurants. And I will say to you, in 1996, particularly when I arrived, there were no restaurants. The only restaurants that there really were the ones that were in the hotels, in the few hotels there were. It was the Hotel Astana, and there was the Intercontinental, but there were very few hotels. And then most of the local restaurants, many of them had gone out of business because it was the transition from the communist time until the new economy. And now when you go into Almaty has wonderful restaurants and wonderful food, and it is just almost unbelievable. Even when I left in 1999, Almaty was still was a wonderful place to live, but it wasn't the vibrant, really exciting city that it is today. You know, when I was here in the first months I was in Kazakhstan, I was here for a conference in April of 2019, and I had a chance to walk the pedestrian zone. I think it's called the Arbat, that goes from the Opera House down further into the city. And I said, it was a warm spring night, and I said, Almaty is now in Europe. Because there were people on the street and children playing and a really warm atmosphere of people just enjoying themselves, and wonderful restaurants and street vendors, and this was not the Almaty that I remember from 20 years ago. There were a lot of nice things back in the 1990s, but at the same time, Almaty has grown up as a city, and the big tall buildings and all. We always had the mountains, and they were always wonderful, and the recreational opportunities in the mountains. I enjoyed them then, and I enjoy them now. But Almaty today is a modern city, and it has a life and a vibrancy that I think every Kazakhstani should be proud of. Because it truly is the cultural capital of Central Asia.
Mm-hmm. Okay, but how were the apples this year? How were the apples our?
Oh, probably the apples were.
No, we cannot find those.
Yes, I know the Almaty apple. I've been thinking about that a lot, and I remember the Almaty apple. Now they say they can't duplicate it. And I know that this is something that really shocked me, but I remember I used to cross-country ski through one of those apple orchards, and the problem is those are all houses now. And this is sometimes a problem in development, that you don't think about what you're really trying to preserve. Now, I'm hopeful that the very famous Almaty apple can be redeveloped. But I will say that just looking at the way microclimates work, it probably has to find the right place in the relation to the mountains in order to grow successfully again.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Could you please share more your family's attitude to Almaty? As you said, their childhood were here.
Oh yes, their childhood. When I came to Almaty in 1999, no, not 1999, excuse me, but 1996, my children were 4, 6, and 8. And they spent a very memorable part of their childhood, the 3 years we were here in Almaty. Well, what do they remember? Well, one of the things is we spent many days in Chimbalak in the ski resort. And my children really learned to ski here. And in fact, even today, 23 years later, 22 years later after we left, my children, all 3 ski very well because they learned very well here, and they've really never forgotten. But I also remember my children enjoying the amusement parks in the summertime, and even these little go-karts, or the horse and buggy riding, and these things that you used to have all over the city, and they enjoyed all of that. I was in Panfilov Park on Saturday, and I saw a little child in one of the go-karts on the square, and I said that was my children during that time, and they loved that. They also spent a great deal of time in the summer, both in the mountains hiking and on climbing rocks. And then also in Lake Kapchagai. And I have a number of pictures of my children on Lake Kapchagai enjoying it, and for them it was wonderful. And in fact, I have to tell you, my wife and I celebrated our wedding anniversary on October 4th, 1996, and I'd have to count to remember how many years that was. We were married in 1980, so I guess this was our 16th wedding anniversary. We spent on a boat on Lake Kapchagai because we had a boat arranged and we went for a boat ride, and it was beautiful. It was early October, and the weather was beautiful fall weather. So it was one of our special. It was one of the special times in our life.
Okay, thank you. So now with our Almaty Cities Days coming soon.
Yes.
So let's congratulate our TV audience.
Oh yes. Almaty kana kutlu bolsun. I want to congratulate all residents of Almaty and all residents of Kazakhstan on the upcoming Almaty Day. Almaty is a wonderful city, and every Kazakhstan citizen should be proud of this city and its people because it represents the best of Kazakhstan.
Okay, thank you very much for giving this interview. I think it will be interesting for our TV viewers, audience, so thank you for...
Well, thank you very much, and you know, it's always a pleasure to talk to you, or really to all the journalists in Kazakhstan. You know, I do want to say that, and make sure that I assure your audience, that even though the United States has left Afghanistan, it doesn't mean we're leaving Central Asia. And we really value our relationship with Kazakhstan and with the other Central Asian states. And our relationship in the security area will continue, our economic relationship will continue, and will even grow and widen. And I'm hoping that in the next couple months we'll have more traffic on our agricultural initiatives in Kazakhstan. And then when it comes to our people-to-people ties, I was here in June for Go Viral, which I think is something that for thousands of people in Central Asia is a wonderful thing. And we just concluded the 48-hour film festival, where we're developing those young journalists and young filmmakers of the future in Central Asia. And this is back to where I said you couldn't have those events anywhere except in Almaty, because Almaty is the cultural capital of Central Asia.
Anyway, so in which spheres we have achievements in relationships? In which spheres? Economic, agriculture, as you mentioned.
Well, we have, of course, the United States was instrumental in developing Kazakhstan's oil resources back in the 1990s. And I think that this has been a very, very successful relationship for Kazakhstan. Now we hope that we will continue the same kind of economic relationship in the field of agriculture, where we're hoping that we can make Kazakhstan a successful agricultural exporter over time. It will take a lot of work, but our American companies are very interested in this, both the irrigation companies and then, of course, our major agricultural concerns. Then, in terms of the cultural, as you know, we have extensive programs for training people in English. We have exchange programs, which I know you have been a recipient of in the past, and those are things that are exciting for us. You know, I'll give you an example of where one that was an exchange program that was wonderful. We trained several people in Kazakhstan on emergency management. How to and we brought them to the United States to look at things like about ambulance services and how they can work effectively, and how 911 type services, emergency request services can work. And those are practical educations that we want to share with the Kazakhstani people. And what's good is about all of these educational exchanges, our people in the United States learn a lot about what Kazakhstan does, and we can learn from what the people here do too. And those are wonderful things. And then we will continue, of course, to work on Kazakhstan's democratic development. And it's something that we will continue to work with human rights groups and with other non-governmental organizations in Kazakhstan to really make sure that the Kazakhstani people's voice is represented, and that Kazakhstan can build a better future. I say this, that I want to be optimistic about Kazakhstan's future, and we believe that by really becoming a more modern country, Kazakhstan can achieve a successful future.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.